The Gospel of Mark.
Listen to Jesus. Hello. In our previous devotion entitled Again Jesus Began, Jesus is teaching. He's teaching from a boat that is close to the seashore where a multitude of people have come to hear him. Again, he began to teach beside the sea, and a very large crowd gathered about him, so that he got into a boat and sat in it on the sea, and the whole crowd was beside the sea on the land. Mark 4:1. Mark is teaching us here for the first time that Jesus uses parables, stories, in his teaching. Now, his parables tend to be very brief stories that have things that people would understand in their culture, and there are comparisons in those to understand spiritual things. So in general, people would understand the meanings in the stories. Now, only those who have put their faith in Jesus as the Messiah would understand the deeper things. It's very important. We're going to look at three things. First, Jesus says, listen. And then later, when we go down to verse 9, at the very last word of his story, Jesus says, hear. Listen, behold, a sower went out to sow. Mark 4:3. And he said, he who has ears to hear, let him hear. Mark 4:9. Now, Jesus wants us to listen to him. That means he wants us to focus on his teaching. Why does he want us to listen? To focus? Why? Well, it's because what he's going to say is very important. Jesus said recently at the end of the story, the last word, he said, hear. The first thing he said, listen. So we need to understand Jesus. Jesus is commanding people all at the seashore and us to listen. We need to go ahead and listen to him. Listen, behold, a sower went out to sow. And as he sowed, some seed fell along the path, and the birds came and devoured it. Other seed fell on rocky ground, where it did not have much soil, and immediately it sprang up, since it had no depth of soil. And when the sun rose, it was scorched, and since it had no root, it withered away. Other seed fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked it, and it yielded no grain. And other seeds fell into good soil and produced grain, growing up and increasing and yielding 30-fold and 60-fold and 100-fold. And he said, he who has ears to hear, let him hear. Mark 4:3-9. We are not farmers, but we understand that when you sow seeds, you must have good soil. You must, in order for it to grow and bear fruit. Now, that's something that people generally understand. Now, that's the first meaning. There are two other meanings. The second meaning, it is a general application spiritually to our lives. We grow spiritually. Now, the third meaning has a deep meaning, one that only Jesus' disciples, those who are followers of Jesus, can understand in their hearts and intellectually. We're not talking about a person who just labels himself as a Christian. No. The reason is because they do not have genuine faith. Have you given your life to Jesus? No? If you know that Jesus is the Messiah, you would love him and want to serve him the rest of your life. Do you really listen to Jesus? In our next devotion, we're going to start studying this parable, verse by verse, from verse 3 to verse 9. Coram Deo.
To live coram Deo is to live one's entire life in the presence of God, under the authority of God, to the glory of God.
Everyday Breadcrumbs, Devotional Studies for the Deaf by Brad and Tammy Schaaf, taught in American Sign Language by Brad and voiceover by his wife Tammy. All verses from English Standard Version. BradDaleSchaaf at gmail.com.